Yeah, it was super cool to watch that in a filled theater. Usually, I feel like I watch Netflix shows alone at home, right, or with my wife. So it was super cool to hear everybody was laughing at the jokes. Yeah, how did
It's good to
you?
hear.
I mean, that really hit me. Like, how did you like make it so humorous, and like, what was the joke writing process? I guess.
Yeah, it's just I've been doing this for a long time. I started in 2008, staff job on. I was a writer, staff writer on It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, season 4 and season 5. Love those guys. Love Rob, Charlie, and Glenn. They're just taught me a lot, and yeah, that's where I started. And I've worked on a lot of different types of shows, everything from multicams to Silicon Valley to Dave on FX. Tuca and Birdie, this animated show. So I've gotten exposed to a lot of different types of comedy. But I'd say Beef is the most me thing that I've ever done. It's like 100% me, and so you're just trying to like, as an artist, uh, it's kind of like music. When you start out, you have all your influences, and so then you're sort of mimicking your influences, right? But then, as hopefully you evolve as an artist, you start to kind of develop your own voice, and so the tone of Beef, the comedy of Beef, is just kind of more me.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so we got some audience questions. First up.
Sure.
Oh, hi. So I've noticed with the first season, and there was like a little moment in this first episode, that your protagonists have these kind of weird relationships with animals. With the crows in the first season, and now with this bee and this dude crying. I'm wondering if you can kind of speak to why you kind of have these characters have these strange relationships with animals that don't seem to be a huge part of the story, but it means something.
That's a great question. Thank you for noticing that. And yeah, my favorite stuff, you know, as just a fan, are things where there's symbolism and I have to like, participate. For me, the greatest show of all time is The Sopranos. And episode 1 of Sopranos, you have the ducks in the pond, in the pool for Tony Soprano, and you're just like, what is that about? What does it mean? And it makes you engage, want to interpret. Um, there's something in art history. There's a term called beholder's share, and what they mean by that is how much the painter allows the eye of the beholder to share in the painting, right? So like a Bed Bath and Beyond painting, there's no share. It's just like this is a beach, and so like you don't get to participate in that. But Mona Lisa, you get to participate. You're like, why is she smiling? Is she even smiling? Like, why did they paint her at this moment? And so that's what we try to do with these sort of symbolic gestures. Season 1 had the crows. Season 2, we have a lot of ants and bees that'll hopefully make more sense as the season goes on. But I love hearing from people what they interpret. I know it's a little early I would ask you what you think, but I think I'd love to ask you at the end of the season actually. So we'll have to circle back then. But yeah, there's these little breadcrumbs kind of throughout the season that'll kind of nudge you towards what I intended, but that's not the necessarily the correct interpretation. I'm leaving it vague so that everyone can bring their own self to it.
So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi. Why do you think audiences are drawn to stories where things spiral and escalate?
Um, I think part of it is, you know, we it's the reason cars slow down on the highway when there's a crash. You just gotta check because it's out of the normal. It's I think part of it's wish fulfillment. Um, we repress so much in our own lives. There's a lot of things we wish we could say. Obviously, right now, every time we open the phone, there's some news headline that just makes us angry. And so we got all this stuff pent up. It's got to go somewhere. Like Lindsay says in episode 1, the bad has to come out somewhere, right? And so, this show is a lot about expressing our shadow selves. I'm a big proponent of Carl Jung, who's an incredible, godfather of modern psychology, and he talks a lot about the shadow self. And we all have these shadows that we kind of ignore. And there's this great quote that he said once where he says, if you don't make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And so this show is all about making the unconscious conscious so we can put a name on it and so we can actually befriend it and not have to be ruled by it. And so I think that's why there's something about the darkness that is alluring in modern television.
Thank you.
Hi, beautiful episode. So thanks for letting us experience it with you.
Thank you.
Yeah. I have a nerdy question about. I know Jake directed this episode, but I'm curious with your tone, which is incredible. Translating that from script to screen and directing, and how you're making sure that comes across for Jake if you're in collaboration with him on shot selections. But I just feel like as the audience, we were brought along in all of the nuances of the wonderful acting of those moments from terror to laughter, and that's so difficult to achieve. So if you have any insight into that, I'd love to hear it.
That's a great question. Thank you for asking that. Yeah, Jake is one of my closest collaborators. We've known each other for almost 10 years now, so we have a shorthand, I actually directed half the season, and so even when I'm not directing, I'm on set every single scene. And so nothing happens without me and Jake, huddling up and talking about it. We have really long tone meetings where we go through scene by scene and we literally discuss the tone, and I think with Jake, he's such a brilliant filmmaker. He has this rubric that he came up with for Beef, because Beef is such a perspective-driven show. Each scene, we sort of pick whose perspective it is, and sometimes there's a transfer of perspective. I'll give you an example. In episode 1 that you just watched, when Oscar Isaac's character Josh confronts Ashley at the beverage cart, that actually starts Josh's perspective. So, we see him in his own cart. He's texting Lindsay. The camera's with him, and then he intersects with Ashley, and the coverage. We're actually technically a little bit closer to Oscar and a little bit further from Kaylee. I believe most of the time we're they call it over Oscar to Kaylee. So you see like Oscar's shoulder when you're looking at Kaylee. So the camera is actually putting you more in the headspace of Oscar for the first half of that scene. And then in the second half, we transfer to Kaylee. And so there's this one really long push that we do that actually makes the camera now closer to Kaylee, and then we stay closer to Kaylee for the back half of the scene. And so this rubric of perspective, which is such a simple thing, but not a lot of people do. I find that a lot of TV directors, they do what we call hose down coverage, which is they just shoot from like a bunch of different angles and then they figure it out later in post-production. But that's not how we do things. We really try to be intentional about where do you put the camera, because there's an infinite amount of places the camera could be, but where do you put it to really let the audience be in a specific character's head, and when do you want the audience to leave that character's head and be with somebody else? And so the fact that Jake and I both approach filmmaking like that, it's just made it really easy for us to have a shorthand when we direct these scenes.
Yeah, it was so seamless. It felt like we always were supposed to be with the character that we were with at the moment, and it never felt abrupt. So beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Okay, my question's kind of like a selfish advice question. I'm a writer, I'm a playwright, I have a Jerome Fellowship in playwriting. I I write through the Asian American lens, and one thing I love about Beef is that, like, obviously season 1 is very much through an Asian American lens, I feel like, and then season 2 is still through an Asian American lens, but like much broader of like what the scope actually looks at for that. And you mentioned Moonlight before we watched the episode, and I'd spoken with Trelvin McCraney years ago about my writing, and he said that I need to broaden my writing more if I want to be successful, and I need to stop specifically only writing through the Asian American lens. And it's kind of sat with me for a while. And so what I wanted to ask you, what I wanted to ask you was, how do you balance being able to write specifically in your voice and like staying true to yourself versus like trying to, you know, make money and capitalism? So like, how do you find that balance?
Well, first of all, he's straight up wrong. I'll tell you that. And then, secondly, awesome you're a playwright. I actually hire a lot of playwrights. There's several on staff, and I find that in Hollywood more and more we're getting less scripts as writing samples and more plays. So, you know, stay on it. And but to your question, I think specificity is the thing that makes it more universal, you know. Those textures that only you've lived are the thing, because right now with like, especially with AI emerging, everything's getting watered down, everything's the same, but you are literally 1 in 8 billion people. Like nobody has life experience you have, nobody has your unique perspective. There's no AI that has that. So that's uniquely you, and that's priceless. So the more you can be, the more you're gonna cut through, because you're like, wait, nobody else has that, I want that. But in order for the specificities to come through, you know, like season 1 of Beef, when I was making that, Netflix was actually telling me to be even more specific. They're like, oh, Korean church stuff, like dive in even harder. And the only reason though that they're able to tell me that is because it's a lot like music. You know, there's only like 6 or 7 chord progressions that everyone uses for modern music. So it's not like you're gonna reinvent the wheel when it comes to chord progressions, but the textures, like, you know, the reason, like, you know, everyone like, you know, I know he's canceled, but everyone like gravitated towards Kanye for so long is because like his textures were one of a kind. You know, working with Phineas this season, you know, you listen to Billy albums, his textures are one of a kind. So you can do chord progressions all day long, but that specificity is the thing that's going to make you stand out. That being said, what I find often happens with younger writers, especially, is that they focus just on texture and they totally haven't learned music theory. So they're oftentimes, you have to start with a solid chord progression. You can't be just like putting textures on top of like a, you know, jazz tone poem, you know what I mean? And so I find that if someone's telling you that, then actually kind of revisit your chords and be like, wait, what? Like, I know my specificities are good. How can I like tweak this chord progression so that's something that's more familiar to the ear? So like, you know, season 1 and season 2, if you strip away all the Asian stuff and you replaced it, it would still work because the chords are right. And so that's when I hit a wall like that, when someone's not feeling what I'm feeling from a script, then I don't change the identity stuff. I just relook at the chords and try to make it either more propulsive or tweak a chord to make it feel more emotional at the end of a script. But usually when you tweak that, then that actually solves the thing. He's pointing at the wrong solution is my point.
Thank you.
Hey, I guess my question is, you know, when it comes to Beef and like just how intense the kind of fight is and how much things escalate, I guess what would you say are your favorite beefs throughout history and how have they influenced the show?
Well, that's a great question. I haven't been asked that yet. I'd say, I mean, there's so many real life beefs, you know. like season two was born out of so many conversations with the cast of just being vulnerable with each other, sharing things, being transparent, things that we'll die to the grave with. So we're just, remaining open and trying to like look at real life and put it into the show. So, beefs all day long in real life, but cinematically, there's definitely some touch points for us early on that I shared with the group. I've made a little letterbox playlist that I sent to everybody, and one main beef for me was there's the director Park Chan-wook masterpiece of a film called The Handmaiden. Highly recommend. 5 stars, no notes. It is there's a juicy beef in that one that very much influenced this season. Another beef for me is actually a recent movie, Justine Triet's movie, Anatomy of a Fall. That is a beef between a couple that has a fight in there that you actually hear in a courtroom that just blew my mind. That was a North Star for us. And then a classic beef is Ingmar Bergman, Deep Criterion Collection cut, Ingmar Bergman Scenes from a Marriage. That when that was released, it actually, I think, spiked divorce rate by like 10% all across Europe. And like people were like mad at him because it was like causing divorces. And so that one just stands the test of time of it hit a raw nerve for every couple watching. And so those are some inspirations for us of, just very truthful pieces of art that went there, that said our inside thoughts out loud. And, that was the goal for us this season.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I thought the way you showed like technology and them using their phones and switching apps is really clean. I feel like I've seen other examples where it can be a little clunky or like different. What was the process like of like, was exactly how it's shown, how you wrote it? Do you feel like changing what people typed and everything was like a collaborative effort with the director, like the way it was shown on screen, how did that come about?
Thank you we put a lot of thought into that. So thank you for noticing that. Season one, we sort of established, sort of like a general aesthetic when it came to our text overlays. For me, I agree with you. There's so many clunky versions of it when I watch film and TV that I wanted to do something that felt true to our real life usage of phones. I know a lot of it is in sort of like loosely copying the UI, making it feel organic to the frame where you're not overtaking too much. We tend to really tinker with the composition. But this season, our new thing was actually came up with a way to scroll through apps, when switching apps. And that was with one of our VFX artists, Melissa Khan. She came up with that. I thought it was brilliant. It's a collaborative effort with your whole team. I work really closely with our sound mixers as well, where so much of when I've made my partner angry or something, and I hear the click clacking on the phone, it's such like a part of that experience, right? And so I forget if it's in this episode or not. It might be episode 2. You're gonna hear characters type really angrily, and we like boosted in the mix the clicking, which is like ingrained in our heads. And so every little part of it, we're just kind of chasing mood of how we feel when we text, and even that texting scene in the banquet hall when Ashley's texting Austin while Josh is sort of singling her out, it's not a perfect one-to-one with our iPhone UI, but we try really hard for it to just generally feel like, when you're like mid typing and someone interrupts you and you put your phone away really fast, like that abruptness we wanted to capture. The way we type in all caps sometimes to especially Gen Z to get a point across. So all these little things, we spend hours and hours just tweaking, changing font size, moving things around within the frame. Even our profile photos for everybody, we tweak a lot. So, we have an amazing team that puts a lot of intentional thought to every little pixel.
Sweet, thanks. There's a couple more, okay?
Yeah, no, of course, it's great.
Anybody else have any questions? Come on down.
Hi, so I noticed that inside the house there was a signed Kobe jersey. I also noticed that there was a picture of Josh with Michael Jordan. I was just curious, were these like decisions that you made to kind of show like your passion for basketball on the show, kind of like the 81 thing you mentioned? And will there be more Easter eggs like that throughout the season?
Yes, good eye. Yeah, no, yeah, we definitely thought about his character. He's a general manager at a Montecito Country Club, probably like grew up in Ventura County. And when you're a GM at a club, you're intersecting with a lot of sports types. So I imagine he'd get a lot of things signed. So in my head, he probably put Kobe pretty high up there. And so we got that up. But we're always putting our mind in the shoes of the character. You may have, I don't know if you caught this, when Ashley's at the urgent care and she FaceTimes her dad, he's wearing a Vikings hat, but the rest of the family is wearing Chargers jerseys. So in my head, her dad, I think she's, in my head, she's from Minnesota. Her dad's a Minnesota fan. Later you're gonna see in episode 4, there's a little Easter egg where he says that he's at a Lakers-Wolves game. So he's like all things Minnesota. But then, he clearly in the show we're depicting that he's not married to Ashley's mom anymore. He remarried. And so I thought it'd be interesting to show when he remarried into a Los Angeles family. And so they're a Chargers fan. So all these little details, because the way we go in prep, we have our costume designer, our set designer, everybody, they come to you with questions. So they're like, hey, you're gonna shoot this FaceTime on the set. What do you want the family to be wearing? So then you gotta like pause and think and be like, okay, well, what makes sense here? You probably remarried. When you remarry, you're never gonna marry into the same sports family. That's like super rare. So, you start discussing these little nuggets that most fans aren't as eagle-eyed as you, so they don't notice that. But, we put that in there just to create subconsciously this feeling of truth, this feeling of honesty in the backstory.
Awesome, thank you.
First off, congrats on the let's see, right here, okay, on the episode. Great, great like launch and good hook at the end. One of the things I was thinking when I like the first few shots was the color palette, and it really reminded me of like 60s. And like if there was nothing, it wasn't until probably like 5 minutes in when I see the cars pull up that I realized like this is current time. And obviously I've seen that in the trailer, but intentionally throughout the show, I could pick those out. Like was that through production, or was that like currently like as you're writing it, you wanted it to be sort of modern but like a timeless look? This is a 2-part question, by the way. This first one.
That's great call out. I haven't been asked that yet either, and thank you for asking, because we put so much thought into the color grade. And we have an incredible DP in James Laxton. He shot Moonlight, Underground Railroad. He works with Barry Jenkins mostly. He works with this color house, Color Collective, based in New York, which we actually worked with in season 1 as well. And there's a colorist there, Alex Bickle, who's a genius. He did season 1 of Beef. He did Everything Everywhere All at Once. He did Moonlight. And so in prep, we have a lot of conversations about what we want our color grade to be. And exactly like you're saying, we wanted this story to feel timeless, that even though it's set in the modern era, that you could imagine this taking place in really any time, because the things these characters are going through aren't really just singled out to 2026. I think these are problems that everyone's going to go through forever, because that's just who we are as humans. And so we wanted to create a timeless feeling, and something that felt more filmic. There's a slight grain that we added to it as well. And then what we do is our colorist Alex Bickle prepares what's called a LUT. And the LUT you actually put into the monitor, into the camera. And so when we're shooting on, even before we get to post-production, as we're shooting live, on your monitor, you see the picture with the LUT on. So you're actually getting a sense of the color grade. It's not perfect, but it's really close. And then we fine tune the color in the post-production.
Yeah, and I really thought like the country club aspect, like, oh, that could work, right? And that just, you go into some of those places, very timeless. So thank you. So the other one, so as like a fanboy, I'd be remiss if I would say this, and I'm assuming you were hoping to get through this whole promotion period for the show without the news leaking about your next project. I'm a huge X-Men fan. I've been my whole life for about 40 years. How excited are you for this?
Same, man. I've been a fan of X-Men since I was little. Actually, speaking of Minnesota, my fondest memories growing up is waking up Saturday morning. I think it was like 9 or 10 a.m. Central Time, right? And then like X-Men on the TV, And my dad and I would watch that together because my dad's a huge X-Men fan, and then that's what got me into the comics. And I've been done one movie with Marvel. I wrote Thunderbolts uncredited, but it was an enjoyable experience doing Thunderbolts. But this is a whole nother level. This is something that these characters are near and dear to me, and I think for us it's really about getting back to the root. Getting back to that Claremont run and just feeling like. What the original characters were meant to be, how they feel. Obviously X-Men has a lot of themes about politics and being othered, which are just baked into the DNA of X-Men, but there's a lot of inner character stuff, a lot of drama, a lot of like romance and emotion between the members that, it's kind of been glossed over. That's like really a huge part of the comics. So we're just trying to return back to character. And it's early. I've been meeting with Kevin and Lou regularly, and we're still figuring out the right configuration of everybody. But I think true fans are going to be really excited by this one.
Awesome. Well, I'll cherish this moment. So thank you.
Yeah. No, thank you.
You guys didn't know Sonny's writing the new X-Men movie?
Awesome. Thank you guys so much.
That was such a good first episode. I was really engaged, and it makes me excited for the rest of the season. So I'm definitely going to be tuning in when the whole season comes out. I remember watching an interview that you did, and you mentioned that you got inspired from when you shot your music video with RM in Korea. I was wondering if any of those conversations or personal experiences, whether it's working with RM or the Korean team, or just overall your time in Korea and working there, was it woven into the script, and how was your experience there inspired there?
Thank you. It was a huge, it's the reason that Korea is such a big part of season 2. I went out there during the writer's strike because I wasn't able to work here. And so, you're not allowed to write anything during the writer's strike, but you're allowed to direct. And RM is one of the members of BTS, global phenoms. I'm a huge fan of theirs. RM reached out to me and was like, hey, can you come shoot a music video for me? And I want it to be like spiritually like Beef. And so I hadn't been back to Korea in so long, went back and I just caught the bug. It was so cool to shoot there. The crews are amazing, the locations are amazing, and I was starting to be exposed to like this upper echelon part of Korean society that I've never been exposed to before. My family was very poor growing up, so there's a side of Korean society that this is new to me, and so I thought that would be an interesting angle. This kind of tug of war for characters' soul, kind of, and obviously it's a tug of war for Charles Melton's character Austin. And so I knew that I needed this Korean conglomerate to be a part of a season. And I never thought I'd get two of the greatest actors of all time in Yoon Jung from Minari and Song Kang-ho from Parasite. And the peak of my career was we were in Korea shooting a scene from episode 3. It's the first scene that Yoon Jung and Song Kang-ho have ever done together in the history of Korean cinema. For some reason, they've never been in a scene together. We're shooting at a More Pacific, which is an architectural marvel of a building in Seoul that no one ever gets to shoot at. And in the middle of shooting, director Bong Joon-ho, the director of Parasite, stopped by set and surprised us. And he, to me, is the GOAT. Memories of Murder, Mother, The Host, Parasite, like Snowpiercer, Mickey 17, like you just name it. His filmography is the GOAT. And so he stopped by set, surprised us. He came up to the monitor, he elbowed me, and he kind of joked, "Are you sure you want to frame it like that?" And so I was just buzzing. And we started shooting the scene, and I kind of glanced over, and he was at Video Village watching the scene with his headphones on. He was just doubled over in laughter. And that's when I knew, like, no matter what happens, everything's going to be okay. I made director Bong laugh. And so, I'm so blessed and fortunate to have had the luck of being able to pull all these greats together. And I think you'll see this season that this Korea story arc grows with each episode, and it ends up in a pretty crazy place. We shot in Korea for a month. So I'm excited for y'all to see that side of this story, because it's probably the thing that I'm most proud of in my career.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's give it up again for Sunny. Thursday at midnight, you said? Can we all stay up? Our watch parties. Thank you again, Sunny. Best of luck. Let's go, Wolves. Should we do a Let's Go Wolves here for a second? Let's go, Wolves!
Let's go, Wolves. All right, Wolves are 6. Let's go. Thank you, guys. Bye.